to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins, editor-in-chief, and today I am here with the one and only Johnny Sobchak, our senior writer at Inside the Film Room. Johnny, how are you on this fine Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing well, Zach. I'm doing well. I'm recovering from lots of travel. We took a little break there. Well, we got a kind of a makeup episode almost going on today. Reviewing Quiet Place Part 2, which came out last week at this point. But I'm very excited to talk about that. And yeah, a lot of news to cover as well. It's good to be back. I'm excited to dive into it all.
Right. For us, it's kind of weird because for the listeners, they haven't missed a beat since we still had an episode last week with Cruella. But for us, since we recorded that 2 weeks ago, it's been a minute. So it's kind of a weird balance here. But like Johnny said, we've got A Quiet Place Part 2 on schedule today. We're going to be making up some of the news that, not making up as in faking, making up on what we missed talking about from last week, because like I said, we had pre-recorded that. And we're also going to do a mini review of The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, the third movie there, which came out this past week. Johnny and I weren't expected to see it, but we both ended up seeing it. So going to throw that in there. Not going to be a full-blown review, but that's what we have on schedule today. But before we get started on anything, we have to shout it out. The week of Lasso is upon us. Yeah. If you're listening to the podcast, put this on pause and go to YouTube and watch our video and then come back and finish the podcast, because we've been hyping it up for about a month now at this point. The week of Lasso is our new Ted Lasso centric week on YouTube and social media that we're going to be promoting. I've had 7 interviews with the cast of Ted Lasso. They're going to be coming out one by one this week, starting today with Nick Muhammad, who plays Nate the Great on Ted Lasso. And you can find those on our YouTube channel. Check it out. I'm sure we'll be posting about it on social media as well. And it's going to be, like I said, every day, new interview, getting some juicy details about season 2, talking about season 1 and everybody's favorite parts about the show. So it was a blast to put together, and I'm excited to finally get that out there. So go ahead and make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you can check that out. But beyond the week of Lasso, what is the week of Johnny held? What have you been up to since the last time we podcasted?
Oh, brother. I'm racking my brain now trying to think of what I've actually been up to. Because it's been getting back from vacation. I was feeling pretty tired, and then I was working some this week. Of course, what we're going to be talking about today, I got to see A Quiet Place Part 2 on my trip to New York. We went and saw it at Lincoln Square IMAX, which is the biggest IMAX screen in the country, in the United States. It is massive for sure. I've been in a lot of big auditoriums before. I've seen some big screens in several different states, and that one was not a disappointment by any stretch. And then, of course, I also got to see The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It at the start of the weekend on Friday night. I got off work and went over and saw it at my local IMAX, which was fun. Definitely a lively crowd. Everyone was super into it, which was enjoyable. But yeah, that pretty much covers it. I haven't really been, and funnily enough, I am someone who likes sports, but I don't really tune in that often unless it's like a big game or something like that. And the playoffs have been really buzzing for the NBA. So I've actually been watching a lot of the games over the last week. and I've been keeping up with that. So that's been taking up some of my time when I've been at home. But yeah, pretty much covers it. I think you've been a little bit busier with some fast and fun.
Lots of high speed viewing going down over here. Yeah, as the last time that we had checked in, I had just finished Too Fast, Too Furious, the second in my 8-part road to F9. But now so according to everything that I'd been told, you skip number 3, which is Tokyo Drift, and put it in, I believe, after 6. It's either after 6 or after 7, because I'm watching them like in the chronology of the story, not in the order that they came out. So that means that this past week and a half, I've watched Fast and Furious, not to be confused with The Fast and the Furious. And Fast and Furious is the 4th movie, and then I watched Fast 5. So that's the one where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson comes in. So I'm all in on that, but still very much enjoying the just absolute insanity of this series. And it is already like the scale has just increased tremendously, from the first one to the first and the second one were very much like on par with each other. And then in the 4th one, it starts to get darker, it picks up and becomes like more intense. And then this 5th one, it's like international crime, and we're just full go. But I will say that like Michelle Lawler said, she she hyped me that Fast 5 was her favorite, and I think that was my favorite so far as well. It's just, you finally, like, if you watch a trailer for the Fast movies now, it's like the squad, the family, the squad, like all those characters. Fast 5 is the first time that they're all together in like their current state, or I guess what they still are. So that was something that I'd been looking forward to, and I didn't know that that's when it was coming. So was excited to have that put together. But beyond the Fast franchise, oh, by the way, I got my ticket for opening night for F9. So I have
taking it seriously.
I have a firm deadline now, June 24th. So that leaves me 18 days to get Fast and Furious 6.
Get faster.
I'm trying to remember all the titles here because they're titled so weird. So Fast and Furious 6, then so Fast and Furious 6, then F7, is it Furious 7? Then Fate of the Furious, Tokyo Drift, and I've already seen Hobbs and Shaw, but if I have time, I'll throw in a rewatch for that.
Okay, gotcha.
So I will be in attendance on Thursday, the 24th, in Dolby for the experience of a lifetime, even though it's getting not great reviews so far. But that will not deter me. I've invested so much time already into this. So
no one said it was going to be a good experience of a lifetime, to be fair.
It will just be an experience. That's correct. But like you, I also saw A Quiet Place Part 2, obviously, since we're talking about it today, and The Conjuring 3. And I've also, just before we started recording this podcast, I finished my binge of Mare of Easttown on HBO, which everyone had hyped up. I kind of got in at the very last minute, and it ended last week, but I watched it all this week. So I was able to do the straight binge, and that was incredible. That's my favorite show that I've seen this year.
Wow. Okay.
It was the Kate Winslet murder mystery, just absolutely like twists and turns. It delivered. Yeah, all the hype that I had seen on Twitter. Luckily, I hadn't been spoiled at all. I don't know if I just
that's good.
I must have glanced over stuff and not understood what it meant or what, but I was able to come out unscathed, and
nice.
And there was a lot that happened that went down in the final couple episodes that were just incredible. So I would recommend it for anyone who hasn't watched it. I'd recommend it for you. It's a great murder mystery, and Kate Winslet is awesome. So I will expect some nominations, if not some hardware, come Emmy season for her. HBO, they don't rebuild, they just reload. They do not miss.
That's a fact. That's literally a fact.
So that was a great. That's the first time, I guess, in a while that I've like binged something like super fast, and it was definitely worth it. But
I didn't even realize how quickly because I don't even remember you mentioning really that you were like starting it necessarily or like finishing it. It just seemed like all of a sudden you had seen it, and I was like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah,
and it's 10 episodes, right? Or am I?
It's only 7. It's only 7.
Okay,
So it was
not bad, not bad.
a lot more. Not that 10 is unmanageable, but it made it
Yeah.
a lot quicker. But literally, like last night, I like watched one and it ended like right after midnight, and I was like, that's like way past my bedtime for anybody who's listening. Like I'm not Johnny stays up like deep into the morning, but I was like, oh my God, I can't stop now. I'll start one, maybe fall asleep. And then I like stayed up all the way through that one. And it was like pulse pounding. And I was like, I'm gonna hate myself if I watch another one. So I forced myself to go to sleep. But literally it was like so intense that I like sat there awake for 30 minutes, just like thinking about it. So
wow. All right.
It was
sold me. I mean, I was already sold, but I mean, I'm excited. I don't know exactly when I'll get a chance to get it done. I believe the Emmys are coming up, and there's obviously a lot of buzz about that, and in relation to this show especially. So I intend to get a lot of these big miniseries that have come out over the last year or so knocked out.
Yeah, I know that I have not seen it. I'm still behind on The Queen's Gambit. I haven't watched that, but the new, that was obviously like the lock was like Anya Taylor-Joy as like leading actress for a miniseries, or I don't know how it's all broken down for the Emmys, but now people are saying like Kate Winslet is coming for her title. So
right, we
all know, whether you've watched it or not, you've heard of the hype there. So to have Kate Winslet be rivaling that makes it a worthy competitor. But
who's your horse in the race?
Well, I guess I've got to go with Kate Winslet since, I haven't seen the other show. That would just be irresponsible of me.
Well, I guess I was thinking of, because of course there's been some talk about Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh yeah, I mean this is
with those
no, Elizabeth Olsen, love her, can't hold a flame to this performance here. So
that's what I like to hear.
But speaking of that, next week we'll have some more MCU television to break down with Loki coming out this week on Wednesday. But before we get into our news, let's do a little mini review. Like I said off the top, this wasn't on the schedule for The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, but since we've both seen it, let's chat about it a little bit. Obviously, the third movie in the Conjuring series, the 8th, I believe, in the Conjuring universe. It's, I myself, I have only seen, I'm weird, I've only seen The Conjuring 2. So that was the summer that Movie Pass was a big thing. And so I was like, sure, why not? And I really enjoyed it. But, I don't have I'm not in with the Annabelles or the La Lloronas or the Nun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so there's Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. There's the 2 Annabelles. There's the Nun, and then there's La Llorona. So is this the 7th one, or is it the 8th one?
I'm not. Let's see. We'll pull
Maybe
up.
Maybe there's a third Annabelle movie I'm missing. I don't know.
That sounds about right.
I heard a fact that The Nun is actually the highest grossing movie out of all of them, despite being like possibly the worst reviewed. I'm not sure. I'm surprised they haven't done a sequel to that yet.
Let's see. We've got Annabelle Creation, Annabelle Comes Home, and Annabelle. So yes, 3 of those movies. 3.
Wow. Okay, I've only seen 2 of those, I think.
But this is the director of Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is the director of Curse of La Llorona, which is like one of the worst of the saga. So
for that, yeah.
That again, I haven't seen it, so I can't really compare it. But I will say, so for me, with my limited knowledge of this franchise, I pretty much like really enjoyed this movie. It was the same way with the second one. I remember that even though it's part of like the franchise, it feels very much as like its own standalone type. Like this could be like a self-contained story. All you have to know is like Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are like not ghost hunters, demon hunters, basically. And that's all you need to know going in. Obviously there's your little references to Annabelle or to the Nun or something that kind of play a part, but it doesn't hinder your ability to enjoy it. And I found that to be the case here. I thought it was very well done as far as like setting a moody atmosphere. It was part murder mystery, part like demonic possession horror movie, which was an interesting blend, because I remember the last one just being very much like, let's get this demon out of this child. But that was another thing here, that this one veered more into the occult and like satanic worshipers and bringing that, like summoning the demon, versus it just being like a coincidence that the demon was in this child and they're having to get it out. So it was very much like that added a new element to the movie of like, trying to, that there was a villain here beyond just the demon, which I thought was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. So being the one who has more familiarity with these movies, I guess, because I have seen the first two. I've seen 2 of the 3 Annabelles. I really did, this is, I guess, middling reviews overall. Like, it hasn't been a critical
60% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, so that's favorable.
84% audience score, by the way. So
okay,
impressive. The fans are liking it.
But it's done well, over the weekend at the box office, despite being on HBO Max as well. When I went and saw it, like I said, Friday night at IMAX, it was, it's half capacity or whatever AMC is still doing, but it was pretty much sold out. And everyone was really into it. I was shockingly into it. I thought the opening sequence in particular was maybe the best scene in the film. It was pretty damn intense. It was pretty freaky. The film trickery, the movie magic that they had on display in that scene in particular, I think was really impressive. The effects and the cinematography and all the performances, I think, really deliver, and that opening scene kind of sets the tone, because of course you have Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, who are the anchors of this franchise and have always been good in these roles, and they continue to deliver here. I think, I haven't seen the first 2 films in quite some time. It's been years. So I should probably revisit those, but I do really think that this movie does, stand very strongly alongside those. Maybe it's the weakest of the 3 potentially, just because James Wan is such a accomplished filmmaker, and this is, kind of his baby. And I was a really big fan of those. I remember being a big fan of those in theaters and since release, but I really did have a good time with it. It does, as you mentioned on Twitter and Letterboxd, it does lean a little too heavily into jump scares, I think, from time to time. Which, again, when you have a less experienced filmmaker such as this, it's not the biggest surprise. But I did think that he made up for it with some, impressive set pieces, some really fun visuals. Some things felt like they were straight out of like the It films, especially the first one. I haven't seen the second one, but I have seen the first one. And some things that it was just that kind of added flair and creative spark that I think could have been a lot more dull or just bland than it really was. I think it over delivered in that sense. There's a couple scenes that I'm thinking of, such as really the opening scene, especially there's a bathroom section of that with a shower that's pretty interesting. There's also a scene in a dog kennel later on with some very fun lighting and some interesting effects there. And the use of music throughout this film, I thought, was also very well done. It's a great soundtrack, but then the way it's also incorporated into the story and diegetic versus non-diegetic, things like that, I thought was really clever. And just some of the scares, I thought they really went for, and they did some intriguing things that I just really didn't expect. Almost like some Resident Evil type stuff in this movie, which is not at all what the Conjuring movies are typically like. I mean, the Crooked Man from The Conjuring 2 was a creature in a sense, in a way that there was nothing like in the first movie. In this movie, they kind of do something similar, but while staying alongside the possession route and having bodies taken over by spirits. So yeah, overall, I really can't complain too much about it. I do understand the criticisms I've seen, but I had a fun time with it. I thought it was just smart enough, just scary, creepy enough, thrilling enough to keep my attention. I was never really bored. And I also thought, apart from the scares and the horror side of the story, I thought that the actual main plot line of the criminal case.
The devil made me do it.
Yeah, the devil made me do it case. And that kind of procedural element was a lot of fun, and again kept me interested in without having to resort to scares or jump scares or any horror elements really. So hats off. I mean, again, maybe my expectations were just low, and I'm easy to please with this franchise, but I would recommend, at least checking it out. I think you would find some sort of enjoyment of this, especially if you're a fan of the series. I really can't, I've seen a lot of negativity about this, and I really think this might be, Zach, we have different levels of taste and what we're willing to forgive in certain instances. But I feel like this is one of the first movies that I can remember that I've seen a lot of negativity about, but I am like very much on the positive side. Like
welcome, positive king.
I don't really I can't knock it too much. It was good, and maybe I'm not really necessarily going to revisit it or go back to it or watch it again, especially anytime soon, but I enjoyed it, and it was worthwhile experience. So
yeah, I will say I wanted to mention, you mentioned that I had mentioned the like jump scares and stuff, and it wasn't that they obviously, like, a jump scare is going to get me like regardless. It's just like, whether that's what they choose to do to make it scary or not. But I don't know, the way, like, you could tell very much that, like, okay, I know I need to be looking over her shoulder. I know she just turned around, and I know there's going to be something when she turns back around, and it's still going to scare me. But like, it was very much like you could know when to prepare yourself to be scared.
Right.
But it was still able to put me in like a chilling mood. It didn't help that my theater was pitch black when I walked in. I thought it was part of the like experiential marketing of the Conjuring movies. But I don't know if you have a grade to throw on this. I know it's just a mini review, but I gave this on Letterboxd 3 stars, 68 out of 100. So I would, like Johnny, recommend this. It was fun, whether you watch it on HBO Max or in the theater. If you're not super into the universe, then you might as well still check it out on HBO Max. It's there.
Yeah. I gave it a 3.5 on Letterboxd. Again, I didn't think that it was, amazing, but I did think, it was very well done. I thought it was good. And my rating, it was pretty comparable to yours, right around in that area. High 60s.
Look at us agreeing on this mini review, and we're going to be agreeing on our main review. This is an episode for the ages, Johnny.
Unprecedented times.
Unprecedented indeed. Well, let's get into some news here. Let's get this thing started. A couple trailers to discuss. First off, let's go with Reminiscence. I saw this with The Conjuring. I don't know if it was on your big screen, but this, honestly, I did not know that this was a movie ahead of the trailer dropping on social media. I didn't know to be expecting this on the horizon or anything. But Hugh Jackman and Rebecca Ferguson, immediate contender for hottest movie couple. Jake and I had done that a while ago, but we might have to reevaluate after this. But a scientist discovers a way to relive your past and uses the technology to search for his long lost love. Basically, it's by the showrunner of Westworld, so that sounds very Westworld.
Right.
I've only watched the first season of that show, and I don't know if I even finished it, honestly. But this sounds very much in line with that, as far as like these people go under and kind of just they relive their memories, and they don't want to live in this like hellscape of a world that it seems.
That's true. Yeah, for sure.
So what are your thoughts here? It looks big. It looks exciting. A lot of fun. I mean, I think you made the comment on social media that you don't expect a masterpiece, but that it's going to be fun and stylish.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the very least, my biggest thing, and it really struck me because I watched it a couple times on my phone, the trailer, and then but it wasn't until I saw it on the big screen in IMAX before The Conjuring, where it really struck me where it's impressive, like visually. I think it looks very, it's striking in a lot of ways. But the fact that this, Warner Brothers, it's an original script, like it's an original idea, written and directed by Lisa Joy, who is the co-creator of Westworld. She helps write the show, run the show, which is, that's a big responsibility. Of course, it's not like she's a nobody in the industry, but it's not film. Obviously, it's not, film directing. She has directed, I think, numerous episodes of Westworld. But this is like the fact that they gave her this budget, they let her, they said, hey, go, do your thing. And it looks just, and the thing about it that I like also, while it still has strong visuals, it looks expensive. Like it looks like a crisp movie, on the production side of things and with the designs and all that. It doesn't look too big. Like it doesn't look overly expensive. I think it looks like a, I don't know what the budget on this is, but it looks more like a mid-budget action thriller from like almost like in the 90s or like 80s kind of, vein before, everything became big budget movies and mid-budget movies are pretty much, thrown into the dumpster of history. I think this is kind of a nice return to that style. And I think, it's one that could play just as well on HBO Max as it will, undoubtedly in theaters. But seeing it in theaters, the trailer, it struck me even more in that sense. And I look forward to, again, maybe it's not going to be an amazing movie, which I didn't ever expect it to be. Again, I have my feelings about Westworld. I'm not a fan necessarily. I did love the first season. So I am a little bit worried to see where the writing of this goes, or what the script ends up being like. But I like Hugh Jackman. I love Rebecca Ferguson. Good supporting cast. So yeah, I'm certainly interested, and I'll be checking it out.
And they have done a lot as far as like social media marketing is going.
Yeah, they're really going
movie,
all out.
with like Warner Brothers changed their profile picture on Twitter, and they're like rolling out the like number to call or the website for the memory. I don't know what it's like referenced as, like memory care or like memory service or whatever that is in the movie itself. I don't. Have you called that number that they're tweeting out?
Yeah. I sure have.
Have you really?
Yeah, it's Hugh Jackman on the answering machine. It's not set up like an answering machine, but it's like he, says, he'll text. If you text the number, you also get a response. And then they try.
Is it like when you used to call 678-999-8212 and Soldier Boy would answer from Kiss Me Through the Phone?
Yeah, it is like that. But it's I haven't gone through the whole texting situation yet, but it seems like it's quite extensive, and like there's a good bit of like viral marketing behind this in a lot of ways. So I look forward to digging more into that, but it's pretty impressive again what they have put behind this movie, and in a number of ways, not just the movie itself, which looks good.
Well, what looks equally impressive is Jungle Cruise.
Right.
Which we got a new trailer for. I know.
Speaking of originality, Zach,
I believe it was either last week or the week before, but we got the news that it would be on Disney Plus for premiere access as well as in theaters on July 30th. New trailer for it: Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Emily Blunt, and our king Jesse Plemons. But quick synopsis: Dr. Lily Houghton, I don't know how to pronounce that, enlists the aid of wisecracking skipper Frank Wolf to take her down the Amazon in his ramshackle boat. Together, they search for an ancient tree that holds the power to heal, a discovery that will change the future of medicine. So, obviously, this is inspired by Jungle Cruise the Ride at Disney World, which is nothing like that plot. It is literally just a boat that goes through the jungle, and there's a skipper who points out puns about animals. So, very loosely inspired by this. Also, oh my goodness, this is 2 hours and 38 minutes is the runtime here.
You've got to be kidding me.
That we're gonna get 3 hours of Jungle Cruise. That's what it says on when I search it on just Google, and like the information pops up. But I honestly, when the trailer, I know I said it came out maybe like a week ago, but I had not seen the trailer until I went to go see A Quiet Place. So I saw it on the big screen, and it looked very much, this is like trying to be the new, I know Pirates of the Caribbean is still going on, but I feel like this is trying to be like similar to Pirates of the Caribbean. And like, obviously it's not pirates, but it's still like semi swashbuckling, like boating adventure, and it's like obviously inspired by a boat ride at Disney, which seemed to work well for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Exactly.
But there's just a different, like, while that is the case and that seems to be what they're trying to do, there's also like the like fantasy elements of this obviously make it very different from Pirates of the Caribbean. It seems to be less like more silly and less like gritty actiony like the Pirates movies were in the first three at least. But
seems
I will
like
say
like it gives me more like Indiana Jones type vibes almost as well.
Yeah.
Like one thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I could see that. I will say Jesse Plemons, though, when he makes his little entrance, he just seems to be like the most absurd character of all time. When he like pops out of his little submarine and starts shooting a machine gun at them.
Yeah.
But interesting career move for him, but I'm sure he got a bag for it. So respect to the king.
Yeah, I'm sure he didn't even consider it as like a career move because he was just thinking, who the hell is going to watch this movie? But I guess we'll see how well this thing does, because I feel like last year or pre-pandemic, this would have been positioned as quite a large movie, quite, you know, something that could really pop off and be successful, because that's what many of the recent live action Disney movies have been. But I'm curious now that it's, you know, still during the pandemic, but towards the tail end, you know, more theaters are starting to open, capacity is still limited. And of course now it's going to be on Disney Plus as well as in theaters, what the box office is actually going to look like. If there's a possibility that they're, you know, looking for a sequel here, you know, if they're going to end up greenlighting that or not, it's going to be interesting. And you know, regardless of the quality of the movie, I think that aspect will be something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. Well, the last trailer that we're going to talk about today is for a movie that is sure to be incredible. I think we're both on the same page there, which is Last Night in Soho from Edgar Wright, following up Baby Driver with a true horror film, it appears. Obviously, Thomas and Mackenzie. We've got Anya Taylor-Joy. What are your thoughts here? This trailer came out about a week ago, and it really blew both of us away.
Yeah. You know, this has been one of my most anticipated films for years now. I loved Baby Driver. I saw it like 5 times in theaters. I like, that was a movie, it came out at a good time. 2017 was like a banner year in general, but I was a big fan. I've been a big fan of Edgar Wright since I was a kid. Shaun of the Dead was my like real first exposure, of course, and then Hot Fuzz and Scott Pilgrim, all really important films for me. And like my experience, he was one of the first directors who like names that I knew and learned. So yeah, I always had high expectations for this, even last year and coming into this year. And this trailer just really confirmed all that. I mean, this is everything I wanted and expected and more. I think he's got something pretty special here, and he's mentioned other films as reference points for this movie and his inspiration for this movie that I love, like Don't Look Now. I just, psychological elements to this, psychological horror for sure. But it looks like also like legitimate, potentially slasher type, bloody horror as well.
Right.
So, Suspiria, Dario Argento vibes as well, for anyone that's seen that original film. So there's a lot of fun, exciting stuff, elements to this. And the trailer itself is fantastically cut. You have Anya Taylor-Joy singing, downtown. Like it's a great trailer. I think it is the best trailer of the entire year so far. And we're, halfway through almost. So that's a good sign. And this is also coming out with all the delays. It's actually ended up getting pushed to a October date right before Halloween. So I think that also really works in its favor. And I just can't wait to go see this thing.
Yeah, I really did not. This is not like Reminiscence. I did know this is a movie, but I didn't really know like what necessarily it was going to be about. I knew like that we had gotten the psychological horror tease, but
right.
I still don't know necessarily if I know what it's about.
Yeah,
because it's very trippy. You've got
thing,
like the that's not a complaint at all. You've got like the alternate timelines of present day versus in the past, and they're kind of flipping back and forth, and it's all very confusing. But I mentioned in our group message, I had always thought this movie meant Last Night in Soho, as in Final Night in Soho, but
Yeah.
now I'm thinking that it means like previous night in Soho because of just like the whole timeline that they're messing with here. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that obviously doesn't really mean much, I don't think, but it was a fun little double entendre that I had caught. But
No,
I will
I
say,
was thinking along those lines as well. So it was interesting to kind of see that during the trailer. I think you got that sense.
and just Googling the movie, it's funny that Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie are the first two, then Jessie May Lee, and then above Matt Smith, the fourth and fifth listed actors are James and Oliver Phelps, the Weasley twins, who are the cloakroom assistants who take off Thomasin McKenzie's coat as she enters the theater, which that's like I had to go watch the trailer just now and confirm that's like a blink if you'll miss it little moment. But shout out to the Weasley twins, glad they're doing well.
And also as far as the cast, interesting little tidbits as well. Diana Rigg, this is her final film appearance. She passed away last year, of course, and she played
Lady Olenna
Tyrell on Game of Thrones. So I think it's great. This seems like it's going to be a great last film to appear in, and it'll be nice to see her one last time. So yeah, it's I can't wait. I just really can't. I did not know that the Weasley twins were going to be in this, but that's a pretty neat inclusion. So yeah, I'm all game. I don't need to see anything else from this movie. I will gladly look at more things from this movie, but if I could watch it tomorrow, I definitely would.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. So now beyond the trailers, let's get down to everything else that happened in the past 2 weeks. Very timely, since we were talking A Quiet Place today. First of all, A Quiet Place Part 3 has been greenlit. We knew that was sort of the plan, that there was going to be, obviously this is part 2 that we're reviewing, and then there's going to be a third chapter here. But in addition to that, A Quiet Place, the spinoff, which we had heard about previously, now has an official release date. So this is with Jeff Nichols on board to direct. It's a separate story in the same world. So not a continuation with Emily Blunt or Millicent Simmons or Noah Jupe, none of those characters. But this will hit theaters March 31st, 2023. Now that you're on board, no spoilers for the review, but you're more on board in the Quiet Place universe. How does this make you feel knowing we're getting a part 3 and a spinoff?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to a part 3 to see where the main story continues. But Jeff Nichols is a very accomplished and talented filmmaker. University of North Carolina School of the Arts represent. He is an alum. But yeah, I'm glad. I think that this universe is rife for expansion. I think that you can tell a ton of different stories. You can show off a bunch of different locations, a bunch of different character types. Seeing just one small white family in this rural area of the United States is a good starting point, but I think you can really branch that out into some cool spots. So yeah, I am down for all of that. I'm down, as long as they have stories worth telling and they have filmmakers that are talented and worthy of telling those stories, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, like, just not necessarily like who the story is about, but just the way that they tell the story. Mm-hmm. This part 2 confirmed that it is not just like a copy and paste, that there are different ways to tell a story in a world where the monster, like, there's more than just you have to be quiet. So part 2 confirmed that, and that gives me even more confidence that obviously part 3 will continue to be great, and that there is enough for a spinoff and, like you said, multiple different stories within the world.
Yeah, no, it's again, very tantalizing, I think is a good word to describe it, these opportunities that are coming up.
Well, to throw it back a week prior, Cruella 2 is officially in early development as well, with Craig Gillespie, the director, and screenwriter Tony McNamara back on board. Presumably Emma Stone, Paul Walter Hauser, Joel Fry, not Emma Thompson, RIP, but the rest of the core characters would be back. Yes, not RIP Emma Thompson, RIP her character, just to clarify. but that crew coming back as well. I mentioned it last week when we were talking about the movie. I wanted this. I wanted Cruella 2, and I wanted that to happen ahead of a potential 101 Dalmatians version as well. So I'm glad that they took my advice. Old Bobby Iger, I know he's not in charge anymore, but they listened to the podcast. They said Zach wants Cruella 2 before we go 101. Let's do it. Let's give it to him. So I approve of this. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for taking my advice. Johnny, are you going to be, I know you didn't catch up yet. You haven't watched Cruella after our review.
No, I have not seen it.
Does knowing that we're getting a second one make you more likely to see it?
No,
the first one.
No.
Devastating.
It makes me wonder, is Emma Stone going to be playing Cruella until she's like 40, 45? Is this a potential Wolverine situation here, Zach? Is this where she really just makes her genre footprint with this role? Because I mean, you got Cruella 2, you could have a Cruella 3, you could have live action 101, 102 Dalmatians. The possibilities are endless, Zach.
They truly are. As long as those Dalmatians keep popping out puppies, you could go 103, you could go 104, maybe even 105. It's really just set for success here.
Hey, respect. She's getting a bag and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I also, as I mentioned last week, like, it wasn't just like, oh, hey, we're gonna have a big star come in and phone in a performance and just use that to hype up this movie. But she actually like delivered a great performance, was able to have a lot of fun with the character, it looked like. So as long as if she's getting a bag and she's enjoying herself, I could see her sticking around for obviously Cruella 2 and potentially more. So
that's what
I'm fine with that. It was a very enjoyable movie, and I'm looking forward to more.
All right, game on.
What's popping on the superhero front, Johnny?
Oh man, it's just so much popping. We have well, first off, something that just happened on Friday, I believe, right before we got into the weekend. We had Issa Rae is joining the cast of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the sequel to the 2018 film, which was a runaway success, won the Oscar, of course, for animated feature. And she'll be voicing Spider-Woman, which in the comics is a character named Jessica Drew. I'm not super familiar with that character. I am aware of her and Spider-Woman as a character and the design and everything. But no real expectations from me on that front. I think she's a strong addition to the cast, of course, which was already a strong voice cast in the first movie. Not totally sure, all of the characters and voice actors that are going to be returning for this one, but I think they're clearly heading in the right direction with that addition. What do you think?
I agree. I enjoyed it most recently, I guess, in Lovebirds, which I don't believe you were as high on, or maybe
I did not even watch it, Zach.
Did not even watch it. Wow, devastating. But from everything that I've seen, it's been a very warm reception, positive casting news. People are behind that. I will say this is obviously the animated version and it's the Spider-Verse, but isn't Olivia Wilde supposedly directing a Spider-Woman movie as well? Obviously that would be like a live action one.
Yeah, it was
in the Sony, that's in the Sony verse. So obviously we know there are no rules in the Spider-Verse anymore. So who knows what could happen, but maybe this could foreshadow something that's going to happen in the Olivia Wilde movie.
Well, that's what I was going to ask as well. Something that popped into my head. Jessica Drew in the comics is not, she's a white lady. So I'm curious if they're going to maintain that for this. It would seem that they wouldn't, right? That they would just, race bender, but I am not sure, if they would just have her voice, a white character, if they would just make it a black character for the sake.
I imagine that's what they would do, that they just change the race of the character.
Which will be interesting. As you mentioned, there's no rules, and Olivia Wilde is attached to do a Spider-Woman live action. Would they just carry her over into that? Would she even be interested? Issa Rae, would she be interested in portraying it in live action? I mean, again, lots of possibilities, and with Sony, and you really never know. But I'd be open to all that. I think it's a good choice.
Well, while we're talking about Sony, there was some more Spider-Man news. and that's the fact that Aaron Taylor Johnson is going to be playing Kraven the Hunter, a Spider-Man villain, in a solo Sony Marvel film. So following in line with Venom, with Morbius, and now Kraven is getting a movie over there as well. I'm curious, we just said no rules in the Spider-Verse. Aaron Taylor Johnson played Pietro, played Quicksilver in Avengers Age of Ultron. So now he's double dipping in the MCU hybrid, I guess. Sony is still kind of, we've been confirmed that it's all connected, right?
Well, Sony says and claims that their plan, their universe, with what they're establishing with all these solo movies and everything, it has a larger intention, and it's not clear right now what that is. Of course, there's speculation that at some point they're going to be like, oh, well, now Tom Holland's going to show up in these movies, or now they're going to show up in the MCU. I don't know what the hell to think of it. I don't think there's no confirmation of anything. I think it's all rampant speculation, which just grows crazier and crazier when the MCU is now introducing the idea of the multiverse and these other things. So nothing's off the table.
Well, what is your reaction to this casting then? Not so much what it means for the multiverse and the MCU, but just Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kraven. I know we've multiple times within our group message, at least, like fan casted and shot some names around for who we would like to see as Kraven. But does this meet your expectations?
Well, my expectations were nothing. So I would say in that respect, it doesn't make a big difference to me. I mean, Aaron Taylor Johnson, I like him a lot as an actor. I think he's very talented. He was just in Tenet last year. I think it's interesting to think about the fact that there are probably a lot of other names out there, in competition for this. Keanu Reeves was mentioned. Jason Momoa was mentioned. Would you have preferred either of those? I'm curious.
I mean, it's hard to turn down Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That I mean, and I don't know a ton about Kraven beyond just like that he hunts animals, that he's like obviously it's in the name, Kraven the Hunter, but Keanu has from what I've seen from the comics, Keanu, like the John Wick look is basically like a Kraven like look, almost kind of just a little less rugged.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty much spot on, and Keanu's just so cool. I think I'm not sure Keanu could play a like kind of like a slimy dirtbag as well as Aaron Taylor Johnson can. Which is very much a credit to Aaron Taylor Johnson as an actor, because I don't think he's like that at all in real life, of course. But Jason Momoa, I think, would have been really cool. I can't deny that. But I'm
Pedro Pascal.
That would have been cool as well. I think I would say, though, with those other comparisons, I think I'm just glad, especially as a DC fan, that Jason Momoa is kind of keeping his nose out of the Sony mess for the time being. I think it's good. I think this is a good fit. I just can't be bothered to be interested in this movie, really. I mean, I'm sure it'll be fine, probably, maybe. I still haven't seen Venom. I have no interest.
Nor have I yet. And then Morbius.
Call me when they say Tom Holland is going to show up against some of these.
Well, after we see Spider-Man 3, it's going to be like, for some reason, we now have to go watch it to connect the dots to all of the other Sony big bads. So we'll get there eventually.
This movie, it's interesting to note real quick before we move on that this movie is dated for January 13th of 2023. So it's about a year and a half away. It's not too far away. I'm sure they'll probably get into production, if not by the end of the year, then early next year. The January date, I just caught that. That's a little concerning, but we'll see. I don't know, honestly. Morbius is coming out in January of next year, 2022. So
maybe they should, if they just have to keep going with January releases, maybe they should just put these on pause for a minute.
Well, they'll get, maybe their logic is they'll get a good movie eventually if they just keep dating them for January. They're bound to hit something.
Well, flipping sides to the DC side of things, two big, I guess not big, but like big for the amount of information we have at this moment. costume teases for Shazam 2 and for The Flash. So Shazam 2, we got a little clip from David Sandberg on Twitter in which, well, and also some leaked set photos, but Zachary Levi as Shazam, he's in the suit. Honestly, it looks a little different from the first one, more in line with like what we've seen from Black Adam and like the artwork. So it seems like they're trying to maybe like put those, like juxtapose those two characters in suits a little bit more.
Right.
But funny clip, it's like, it's very dark, so it's meant to be like you can't really see too much. And he's like, don't you guys think we should have turned on a light or something? So it was very much channeling that humor from the first movie. And then we got a tease of the old Michael Keaton Batman logo with some blood on it for the Flash. So a little upgrade for Michael Keaton's bat suit. What were your any big reactions here? Is this worth even talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a DC fan, I really liked the first Shazam movie, and I'm excited for the Flash. The Shazam suit looks like, I know we've only seen paparazzi photos essentially from a distance, and nothing official apart from that very shadowy video. But it looks like a good improvement. It looks even closer to what I think we could expect from Black Adam's suit whenever we finally get a look at that. And seems more in line with the comics as well, like New 52. Looks great. Looks like a little bit more texture to it. The lightning bolt looks a little bit more, I don't even know how to describe it. The first one, it looks less costumey almost. It looks a little bit more organic, which I think is cool. Which I liked the first suit, but I think this is just a natural, development. And then Michael Keaton's Batman, I had seen online, I can't remember who it was, a reporter, someone in the industry mentioned that apparently Michael Keaton's Batman in the Flash is going to be, his suit itself is going to be motion capture, supposedly. And that this chest piece that we're seeing is going to be similar to what Robert Downey Jr. wears or wore for the Iron Man movies, where he kind of puts on like a big plastic a physical part of the costume over his head and for his shoulders and his chest area and everything, and then the rest will be finished in post, presumably. And I kind of, if that's true, I mean, it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, Michael Keaton's an older guy, and I'm sure he doesn't want to have to put on some big bulky ass like muscle suit. Like that seems like asking a little bit much, especially if he's not going to be in the movie a lot. So I'm digging it. I think it's really cool they did that tease, because they certainly didn't have to, and I hope that they keep those teases coming. But yeah, it's a fun little thing, and more of that is certainly welcome. But it's not a lot to go off of course.
Yeah, just some hype builders there on both fronts for some
exactly
stuff coming soon in the DC universe. But a couple more quick pieces of news, some casting news. John Wick 4, we have a new co-star, Donnie Yen, martial arts legend, has joined the cast and will star as an old friend and ally to Keanu Reeves' titular character. So John Wick's getting a new right-hand man. Thoughts on this? I mean, obviously the fighting is just going to be insane if Donnie Yen is involved.
Yeah. As many people point out, this is Ip Man meets John Wick. And I mean, what more could you want? It's a very accomplished, very well respected, legendary martial artist, action performer, teaming up alongside John Wick. And that sounds, perfectly good to me. So as someone who wasn't crazy about John Wick 3, this piques my interest, and I get to be a little bit more excited to see where they take the story next. If for nothing else other than Donnie Yen kicking some ass.
I mean, we've seen all of as the movies have gone on, we've seen the lore and the history of the different continentals, and just like the expansive network of assassins. So to think that there isn't someone else out there who is as talented as John Wick would be that would be bad on our part. So I'm hopefully Donnie Yen is there as someone that can, we know he's going to be an ally, but someone that can match his skill level, because that would that'd be a shame if they brought him in here and he just wasn't as good as old John Wick.
Yeah. No, I think they'll deliver. I think Donnie Yen and Keanu.
It's in his contract. He's got to be like.
Right. If nothing, and that was another thing I was thinking about. Just if nothing else, I think Donnie Yen and Keanu Reeves are two performers and veterans that have a ton of respect for each other and are very like capable. I think of seeing them and kind of their chemistry and the way that they're any sort of camaraderie on screen, especially as they're supposedly playing old friends, will be an added element to look forward to.
Well, on the opposite fighting side, not violent murdering each other, just punching each other in the face, Jonathan Majors is in discussions to star in Creed 3 as the next adversary for Michael B. Jordan's Adonis Creed. I can't remember. Are you a Creed fan? Have you seen the movies?
I have not seen either of the Creed films, unfortunately. I've only seen, for the Rocky movies, I've only seen the original.
Right. So. That's the same for me. I've only seen the original of the Rocky movies, but I've seen both Creed movies. First one's incredible. Second one's pretty good. Okay. But we did hear earlier that Michael B. Jordan would be making his directorial debut with Creed 3. I'm not entirely sure. Again, since I've only seen the first Rocky movie, I don't have like all of the different backstories on who Rocky fought and everything. But I believe there was some speculation that it was another like relative of a former opponent of Rocky. Cannot confirm that because I just saw it in a tweet. Clubber Lang was it? Yeah, was it? I think that was Clubber Lang.
Yeah. So there's been I don't know if any of this is confirmed or even reported anywhere, but speculation or rumor that this will be his son potentially.
Because that was what happened in Creed 2. It was the Dolph Lundgren's son. I believe that was the actor.
And Apollo Creed, his son Adonis.
Obviously, so. Yeah. So it's just like carrying on.
Right? Makes sense.
We need one of these boxers needs to have a son that goes on to become an accountant or something rather than following in their father's footsteps. And then the dad's just mad at the son the whole time. And he's like, look at all these children fighting Rocky. Why couldn't you have been like this?
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I'm much of that mind.
Also, big yikes. I just Googled to confirm Dolph Lundgren was the actor's name. Headline: Dolph Lundgren, 63, and fiance Emma Crocdale, 24. What? Excuse me. No, thank you. Tough. That's rough.
Oh no.
Moving on to your boy, the one and only Timothée Chalamet. What's on schedule for him coming soon?
Oh boy. Well, Warner Brothers, there had been much rumor and much reporting. And this really started, I can't remember if it was just earlier this year, if it even stretched into last year. But there was talk of a Willy Wonka, basically like an origin movie. And I guess you could kind of think of this as being in the same, there's no really word on what the tone or style of this movie is going to be yet. Just following in the trail, Warner Brothers did Joker, of course. This follows also in the trail of Cruella coming out just recently. Those are darker, takes on characters who are villains. I wouldn't expect this to be anything like that, but there was talk of who they were going to cast for it. They were really down to, it sounded like Tom Holland, of course, who's cast in everything these days, and Timothée Chalamet, who similarly cast in a lot of things these days as well, but I think he has some more artistic pursuits because he's not tied down to Spider-Man like Tom Holland is.
I will say really quickly that this actually popped up. I had like a screenshot from 3 years ago of an article about this, like when it first came up. And the short list included Ryan Gosling and Donald Glover.
Yes.
And I can't remember who the third one was. So like obviously a very different direction to what they ultimately ended up doing.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for reminding me that, because that just got so long ago now. I remember being very excited by the idea of either of those guys playing Willy Wonka. I thought that would have been really cool. It does seem like they're reworking it for a younger, a younger version of Willy Wonka, of course, because Timothée Chalamet and Tom Holland are not, a good bit younger than Donald Glover and Ryan Gosling. But it does sound like Warner Brothers went ahead and they chose Timothée Chalamet over Tom Holland. Of course, Timothée Chalamet is going to be starring in the Warner Brothers blockbuster Dune, which comes out later this year. So I wonder if there was any, if that had any play in it. But Paul King, writer and director of the Paddington Bear films, Paddington 2, two of the greatest films of the 21st century. He is co-writer of this screenplay for the movie, and he will direct it. It's a Wonka origin tale, and this is going to mark the first time Timothée Chalamet is going to be showing off some of his singing and dancing ability, as this is going to be a musical film with a number of musical set pieces throughout the film, which was something that I guess was a big draw for Chalamet and something that they were keen on, his abilities there, which is interesting because, of course, we all know Tom Holland as well as a talented dancer in musical theater and stuff like that. So they really had their pick of it, which is nice. And then yesterday, there was some news as well on the production side of things that Nathan Crowley, who is Christopher Nolan's longtime production designer, just nominated for an Oscar. He's been nominated several times, dating back to The Prestige, the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, Dunkirk, Tenet. He is going to be attached to this as well. So it looks like Warner Brothers sparing no expense. The art directors from Dune, he's attached to this. Overall, all that, accounted for, all the talent, all that. What do you think of this, Zach? Is there any interest here? Is there any level of excitement, or is it more wait and see?
I mean, the names that you just listed off, obviously Chalamet being the most recognizable, that's enough to get me interested. I don't necessarily need a Wonka origin story.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't at the top of my my checklist, but it definitely sounds interesting. I'm curious to see like the two versions that we've had. Obviously, the very first one with Gene Wilder, and then in 2005 with Johnny Depp as Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Very, very, very different takes on the character.
Right.
And I personally, like, I was a big fan of the 2005 movie, like as a kid in 2005. Probably haven't watched it since maybe like 2007. But I remember just thinking that character was super weird and out there, and but very like enjoyable. So I don't know what what vibe they're going to go for, whether it's going to try and be like an origin for the Gene Wilder version or for the Johnny Depp version, or for just like the character at large,
right?
Like the literary character. So
books, well,
they have a lot of different ways to go, I guess.
That's my feeling as well. I think it's interesting because you have, as you mentioned, those two iterations. Paul King, Paddington fame, as I mentioned, he doesn't strike me as someone who would, really follow the route of the Tim Burton style Willy Wonka. I think he's probably someone who has a lot of respect and admiration and for the original, and that iteration of the character in that world. So if they have to follow one of those tracks like more precisely, I think it will be the original. Although I think Timothée Chalamet certainly feels like he could play that Johnny Depp type Willy Wonka pretty well, like with his energy and his voice and everything. I think that would really work. But I do think at the end it will be kind of its own thing. I don't think they're going to try to follow it too closely to either of those worlds. I think it's going to be kind of just, harkening back to the original, like the source material, the book. And then if there are, slight variations and ties into the other movies, that be it. But I wasn't, yearning for a Willy Wonka. I wasn't yearning for another Willy Wonka movie, period, let alone an origin story. But all the talent here, as I have tweeted out several times now, I love all the people involved. So I'm excited to check it out. I haven't seen the Paddington movies. I know that's a sin. I do need to get caught up on those, but I'm sure my excitement will only increase after seeing those. So I'm game. But speaking of Timothée Chalamet, we got two last quick bullet points to hit. He's of course appearing in The French Dispatch, which is Wes Anderson's upcoming film. It's going to be premiering at Cannes Film Festival next month. He's part of a large ensemble cast that is like nuts how impressive it is. But it got an official release date. It's going to Cannes next month, and then it'll be at New York Film Festival in the fall. And then it will be released into theaters on October 22nd, which is the same date as Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho, which is, I mean, as I've said on Twitter as well, that is going to be like, wow, what a weekend at the movie theater if you're able to go see
Which
it.
are you seeing first?
Yeah, so I did a poll on that. Last Night in Soho barely won on the poll. I think it was like 51% to 49%. I think I'd go with Last Night in Soho just because I'd be more worried about like spoilers potentially, or like having any of that twisty kind of crazy story.
You know, in an ideal world, you just go to the 6:00 showing of Last Night in Soho, and then the 8:20 showing of The French Dispatch in the same night.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and hey, ideally that's what I'll end up doing. So it's
Well,
gonna be
ideally, it would be like a Monday screening of Last Night in Soho, and then like a Tuesday screening of The French Dispatch, and so then you can just see your favorite again on opening night. So then, you know, that's the real blue sky option.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. And then finally, this little piece of news. It was long speculated. It was reported by Variety months ago, and it was finally confirmed. Deadline Hollywood felt the confidence to go ahead and say that Dune, starring Timothée Chalamet, of course, will be premiering at Venice Film Festival. The festival runs from September 1st to September 11th. And the official announcement of what the lineup is going to be should be at the end of next month in late July. So that will be when we have the official confirmation. But for now, it does look like Denis Villeneuve's sci-fi epic is going to be going to the Lido. So
how do we get you there, Johnny?
No joke. I was in a Discord server over the weekend. We've been talking a lot about Dune, and several people were asking about a GoFundMe to send me to Venice.
I'm sure just slide in Tanya's DMs and see if she's got an extra ticket.
You got some you got some plane tickets for me. But yeah, no, I mean that'd be amazing. That'd be certainly a dream come true if I could pull that together. But I'm super excited by that news. I mean, just knowing that, Warner Brothers, I talked about this on Twitter as well. 2018, they launched their biggest film of that award season at Venice. That was A Star Is Born, of course, which went on to be a massive runaway success for, box office and awards. And then the same thing happened in 2019 with Joker premiering at Venice and winning the Golden Lion. So I think the fact that they're sending Dune there is a massive vote of confidence, of course. And I know Arrival, Denis Villeneuve's other sci-fi film, came out there, premiered there in 2016. So all good signs. Can't wait. I'm sure the red carpet looks are going to be phenomenal. I'm just imagining Jason Momoa at Venice Film Festival. That'll be a sight to see, I'm sure. So yeah, very, very promising news to cap us off.
Well, we'll find a way. We'll put you in somebody's luggage and send you over.
I'll do it.
We'll make it happen. Shall we get down to business and talk A Quiet Place Part 2?
Yes, we have to do it in a whisper.
This whole podcast will be ASMR. That was probably horribly disturbing for our listeners. I
apologize in advance for anyone who just had to listen to that, especially on headphones.
I don't know why you came all the way up here. There's nothing left.
There are people out there. People worth saving.
Most people had finally given up hope.
All right. Well, A Quiet Place Part 2. Obviously, the sequel to 2018's A Quiet Place, directed and written by John Krasinski. The crew is back. Cillian Murphy is joining them. So we've got Emily Blunt, we've got Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe, John Krasinski for a wee bit in a flashback, and then Cillian Murphy joining the squad. Currently at 96% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, doing very, very well. 83% audience score. for anyone who knows me, they know that A Quiet Place holds a very special place in my heart. It was my favorite movie of 2018. I loved it. Johnny, not so much, but A Quiet Place 2 has made him a believer, it seems. My score, 88 out of 100. Not as perfect as the first one, but an absolute banger of a follow-up. We'll get into it a little bit more. But Johnny, do you have a score you'd like to stamp on this?
Well, before we continue on, I better save you from anyone who's going to hop on you and criticize you. It is Cillian Murphy. So just
since when did he change that?
Yeah, he illegally had to change the pronunciation in court recently. Actually, this was prior to the pandemic. But I will say my score. I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I spoke highly of it on Twitter. I think I would give it pretty much right around an 80. Very strong. I thought it was great. A big improvement over the first film, in my opinion, which I wasn't crazy about the first one. And so yeah, this was a step up, a pleasant surprise.
Well, let's give the people a little synopsis here. Following the deadly events at home, R.I.P. John Krasinski, the Abbott family must now face the terrors of the outside world as they continue their fight for survival in silence. Forced to venture into the unknown, they quickly realize that the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats that lurk beyond the sand path. So this literally, you knew it from the very first trailer that this picks up immediately following the first movie, immediately following A Quiet Place. And I loved that. I thought that I was very much a fan of the fact that like this movie's called A Quiet Place Part 2. I tweeted about this. It's part 2. It's not A Quiet Place 2. Like this is part 2 of a one single story that is being continued. And it very much feels that way. Like obviously things are bigger and this expands out beyond the little bubble that we saw in the first movie, but it's like a seamless continuation of everything. And I am already like counting down the days until I can have like a back-to-back screening of the first one and part 2, and then obviously eventually part 3. But it just flowed so well for me. I mentioned it off the very top when we were talking about it, that I guess whenever you had mentioned earlier, but it would be very easy to just sort of like, okay, the first one was great. It was a good success. Let's just run it back, do it all again, have some scares in the quiet, have people whisper, and call it a day. But this movie, they've changed things so much, and just like the world and what the characters had to deal with, from being on their own home turf versus instead this time they're like out discovering new things. Like the synopsis says, new threats, the people who are out there trying to survive as well. They introduce new characters. The monsters not necessarily have evolved, but there are more of them, and we're seeing them. There was very like limited use in the first one of just like kind of keeping it hidden, but then you see it a little bit, but they're like front and center all the time this time around. But I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I went with Rebecca, and she was a big fan of the first one as well, but didn't get to see it in theaters. So it was cool getting to see her like theatrical reaction to this, being like having to chew the popcorn super quietly and like being involved in like invested in it in a group setting rather than at home. I'll end my ramble there, and we can turn this into a little bit more of a discussion versus me just kind of going on whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, it definitely is a unique experience compared to pretty much anything else that I can think of, because the only other movie I can really compare it to is the first one. I saw that in theaters, and that came out March 2018, so over 3 years ago. And I just remember, I'm not one to get, I've said this multiple times, I think, on here, but I don't typically get like concessions when I go to the movies. But this time we were in New York, and it was my girlfriend and I, and we got popcorn. She wanted to get us a bunch of snacks, and I was definitely not going to say no to that. So we got a big drink, and we got popcorn and candy and stuff. And I'm just thinking like, wow, I remember when I saw the first movie, I was like, how quiet it was and how I didn't want to make any noise or like cause my chair to squeak or anything like that. And so I was nervous about that. And in this one, it's certainly a bit louder than the first one. I think there's more action. I think that there's some bigger things happening. The score is very prominent as well. So we got some, aided cover from that, which was nice. But yeah, it's just the sound design, again, impeccable. I have no doubt that it'll get, yet another Oscar nomination for the sound team. Krasinski's direction, I think, is a lot more assured. We talked about this, I think, a little bit. But speaking on Krasinski in particular, when I say his direction felt a lot more assured, I think that the set pieces were more impressive. I think that the action was not just bigger, but more engaging. The way he filmed it, the way he edited it. There's in particular one sequence where it's cross-cutting like 3 different ways. There's 3 separate stories going on, and it's all, I mean, it's match cuts and it's ratcheting up the tension, and the way that he orchestrated that, with his editor and everything, I thought was, and I'm sure on the page as well, I'm sure he, scripted it very carefully. I thought was impeccable. Again, I mean, it gave me, shades of Spielberg at times. What did you think of those? And did you feel, because
it really gave me shades of the Phantom Menace, in which there's at the end there's the 3 different battles. You've got the space battle, the battle on Naboo, and then the Gungan battle. No, honestly, kind of, that's not what I thought of, but much more elevated and tactful than that. But yes, when what you're speaking about is when Emily Blunt is like out in the world and she's trying to come back and then has to end up navigating around the monster. And then Noah Jupe's character is like sneaking around as well. And he's like then suffocating basically. And then the dock sequence, right? With Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmons. But the back and forth between all those and like the parallels of what they're doing. And then you also get at the end, you also get another one at the end when the parallels between Noah Jupe and Millicent Simmons, the brother and sister at the big finale. But that was incredible, the way they were able to like cut back and forth and not lose a beat anywhere, because they were like, every situation was so intense. And you could like, all the performances were great too. Like you could really, you believed that you were there. The silent theater helped as well, but that you were a part of that, and that you were right there with them in each of those. But I will say, as much as I'm praising this movie, it still had some areas of like horror tropes, in the sense of like dumb people doing dumb things. Because I'm mentioning this now because of, in that sequence, the whole Noah Jupe stuff, the younger brother was so dumb. It was like brought upon himself because he like leaves. I don't know what his purpose, there was really just the purpose was, hey, how do we find a way to get him out of there so he can make a noise and attract a monster? Because he like gets up, that's when the mom goes out to go and like get supplies, and she's like, just stay here. And like all he had to do was sit there and be quiet. But then he like, it's nighttime, but he gets up to go look for her out the window, looking with binoculars, which like, how are you going to see her in the first place at nighttime? And then he like freaks out at the dead body and knocks stuff over and attracts the monster. And that's what sets everything into motion on that front, at least. But that it didn't bother me too much, because like the result was like such a great sequence. But it was just like, come on, man, you just had to sit there and be quiet and wait it out until she got back with all the medicine.
To be fair, though, I will say in his defense, because I didn't really think about that, or like that didn't bother me necessarily. But I think like he is clearly, like, that character in particular is very and it sounds silly to say it, because of course it's like, it's the post-apocalypse and there's like all this trauma happening constantly, and all these concerns to have at any given time. But I think compared even to like his sister or his mom, like he is very much like anxiety like ridden in a way. And
he just had his leg chomped on.
Yeah, he did have his leg chomped on. And I think, him like kind of sneaking out and like going to see like
you know, what he could see, or like checking on his mom or whatever. Like I can excuse that because like in this situation, like, okay, I can kind of buy that. I will say, you know, thinking on it now, because you kind of get lost in the thought of it all during it. But who, you know, and I have my own ideas, but I'm curious. I'll just ask you, like, offer it. Whose body was that? Is it supposed to be someone that we're aware of or no?
Okay,
or like,
that was another issue, not an issue, but I believe it was Cillian Murphy's Emmett, the character Emmett. I believe it was his wife.
His wife, right?
I was confused.
Died, right?
The child died, and I was confused because when he was telling the story, he said that she was sick, and that it got to the point where he had to leave because the pain got so bad that she started screaming, and so like he had to leave for his own safety. And so I thought that meant that he had to leave their home and come here to where he was currently stationed. And so then I was confused as to why the body was there, but then Rebecca made the point that they both left together. He brought her here because she could scream and still have it be silenced.
Exactly.
But I didn't think about that until Rebecca mentioned it after the movie. So at that point, I was like, wait, are we about to get like a big twist here? And it was like he killed his wife here or something, and then it was going to be like, now he's a bad guy and he's with Reagan, the daughter, like out in the world. And I thought it was just going to have like a really like weird left turn, but luckily it did not.
No, I could certainly see that happening, but I did think that it was his wife. I just couldn't remember, especially, you know, a week removed from it. I couldn't remember exactly what the implication was, but that does make sense.
Another thing that I liked a lot, just speaking about that triple sequence there, they kept mentioning it, when Emmett says the people out there aren't worth saving, and I was like, you've mentioned this at least twice, we better get to see these people. And it kept going on, and I was like, and I thought that like we weren't, but then we finally do with the dock scenes, and you get a taste of what he's talking about. These like this terrifying little girl that is like in cahoots with all of these people, puts the jingle bells around his neck. But that was terrifying to just see, like, I guess these people just hang out on these boats and didn't think, let's get on the boats and leave. Like they were all just like hanging out in the marina and didn't want to go try and get on the island. But again, can't complain too much because it resulted in a great sequence that was absolutely like terrifying and pulse pounding. And I want to know just thoughts on that part of the sequence, and then I want to talk about the island life once we get to that.
So I know that dock sequence was you know, nerve shredding to say the least. I mean, and the way it pays off, especially with the sign language between Cillian Murphy's character and
it was a great callback.
It was a great, they set it up and then they paid it off, you know, like an hour later, which I thought was excellent. No real complaints. It was like, I really had no idea where it was going when the girl showed up. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, this feels like out of a totally different type of horror movie. And then as soon as she placed the noose around him and the people popped out, I was like, okay, that actually makes perfect sense. And of course, I made this comparison on Twitter, and I must reiterate it. This entire movie is heavily influenced by The Last of Us. There's like absolutely no denying it. Like there are very specific, distinct things that stick out here. And I'm of course a huge fan of The Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2. I think that in particular gave me those vibes. And even other things, other post-apocalyptic things like books and movies like The Road by Cormac McCarthy, where you have a father and then a young son traveling together and running into different messed up human beings and people who will do them harm. I thought that the way that Krasinski kind of took this what was in the first film, a very isolated, closed off, man versus, monster kind of situation, and integrated the human beings and turned it into kind of like almost like a road, like post-apocalyptic road trip type
of story, where they're kind of, they have to move across this great space, and they run into humans along the way, and different antagonists, and they kind of have to work together to solve these problems and escape. I thought it was, again, another reason why I found this film at least to be much more engaging and interesting compared to the original. And the island, which we're about to talk about, is a big part of that.
Yeah, I don't know, the fact that like they were able to get there. What are your thoughts on, like, Rebecca raised this, that these people were living over there? Do you think that they should have been trying to help people, or do you think it was okay for them to just be like living their own life a little bit off the coast?
Oh yeah, I definitely think it was okay, because again, you don't know.
They were sending the message on the radio.
They were sending out the secret message, because again, I'm sure they're thinking, well, if we, and because I heard this raised as well. It was like, well, if they, if they have this ability to send out this message, why not just say, hey, we're here?
Why not make it more clear?
Yeah, but you have these crazy human beings that are out there who want to kill and take, resources and other things like that. So I can see why they made it like a more cryptic way.
Right.
Again, I
did feel bad that right when they showed up, also a monster showed up as well, and just like,
well, yeah, because
destroyed their society.
Exactly. You're asking, well, the boat, like, why? The boat going there actually from the marina is how the monster gets there. Like, it actually connects in that way, where that only way that they could have had the monster show was the way that it happened, and it made sense again in the context of the story, which I thought worked. But no, it makes sense. I mean, this is something you see in a bunch of different post-apocalyptic movies and games and stories. Like, you have people who,
the safe haven,
they create settlements, and they create safe havens, and they close themselves off and protect themselves as much as possible, and they don't necessarily go out. They don't venture out. Like, they haven't made, like, they don't need to risk everything to go and like see what's going on out there. And they, in this instance, again, they have the cryptic radio message, which is a kind of like a lifeline to anyone who might be able to figure out and is listening, which I think is again, it kind of accounts for some of that. You can kind of rationalize it that way, and I think it works.
Were you a Lost fan, the TV show?
I have not seen a single episode of Lost.
This very much gave me some vibes of
Okay.
Lost. There's like I'm gonna say some stuff. This show came out in 2005,
That's
so
right.
Spoiler warning. The statute of spoilers is lifted. But there's like the first season or two, they're like just on this hellish island trying to survive. And then they find like the people who have been living there, and they literally have like a town that's hidden in the middle, and it's just like they're having like everyday life, like having book club and stuff. And like that's what this kind of reminded me of. And there was also a hidden repeating radio message in that. So maybe John Krasinski is he's like a huge Lost fan, and this is all an Easter egg to that. But
okay,
we haven't mentioned yet, there's two things that I want to touch on before we wrap up. I just want to talk about Millicent Simmons, who plays Reagan. Loved the decision to like put her front and center now that John Krasinski's character, now that the father was gone. Obviously Emily Blunt is like the big headliner, but she kind of like was almost like a secondary or tertiary character here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
Go ahead. Yeah,
so real quick, because this has been a criticism I've seen of the movie, and it's an interesting one to think about, and I can't really disagree with it. But you had Emily Blunt, who is such a massive propulsive force in the first movie, and was very much a co-lead alongside John Krasinski, and of course Krasinski wrote this one on his own and directed and everything, and she's starring in it yet again. But she got her role basically reduced like so much, and instead of being kind of the figurehead and like leading the way, she is limited, I mean, in screen time and in her role in the story, I think in a couple of ways. And people are kind of like, well, why did he not just make her like the lead? And it's I think the distinction as well, because you could say, well, Reagan, she's a a deaf girl, and a female character that has like her own strengths and is leading the charge and has a significant portion of like the story on her shoulders. But
I think I've also seen people say, well, she does, but it's kind of the way the story is told and the way it's like written and structured, and Krasinski's like hand in it. It's like she's only like that because of her dad, and like she is just an extension of her dad and what her dad has taught her and trained her and everything. So how do you feel about like those criticisms, or like what do you think those are valid, or what would you like to have seen different about that, if anything?
I mean, I really liked the decision to put her as the lead. There's obviously the whole, I hadn't thought about it that way of like her being the extension of the dad, but it makes sense and I like it because like you get multiple times throughout the movie of like dad wouldn't have done this, or like her telling Emmett like that you're nothing like my dad. And that then it kind of comes back full circle and he says that like she is after she saves the day. So I liked that.
I do want to be clear that that is a criticism of the movie.
I know. I'm saying that I like that decision. Though. Yes.
I think I like it as well for the most part. Yeah. I see the logic behind it, if that makes sense.
Right. I don't think that it's like the way that they develop, because this is a discussion I was having with someone else about the movie. Like, obviously for us, it's been 3 years since the first movie, but this is like 20 minutes after the first movie.
Yeah.
And in the first movie, it's very much like Emily Blunt, the mom, and Reagan have beef. Like Emily Blunt like hated Reagan like subconsciously because she blamed her for the death of their child because she gave him the rocket ship with the batteries in it and made the noise. And while for us, it's because someone was asking me like, Emily Blunt didn't seem very concerned that like Reagan was off, like that she had left. And it's like, yeah, they made progress in that first movie as they like came together and like moved on, but still it hasn't been like too much time because it is like all happening in like real time for them versus the time gap that we've had. But that first movie does like such a great job of establishing her being as like a daddy's girl and like doing stuff with him, and that it only makes sense like moving forward in this one that she would like fill his shoes, because like you said, what's his name, Noah Jupe's character, I can't remember his name, but he is very, like you said, he's very not needy, but like anxious and not the strong, brave, confident version like that he could step in as his father, but instead Reagan's the one doing that. And I really liked that. So I do the reverse card on their criticism and say it was a great idea.
All right. I respect it. No, I mean, I can see both sides of it, and I can't like, again, I thought this was a pretty damn great movie. There are certainly issues that you can pick out, and I don't think it's by any means amazing or above any criticism like that. But Millicent Simmons is fantastic again in the role, and Noah Jupe I think has just gotten stronger as an actor as well, and I empathized with him even though he was in a very tough position throughout most of the movie. And you could say
this series and their lower body injuries,
right?
Like from a nail in the foot to a bear trap on the leg, like somebody's getting a leg cut off in part 3.
I will say one gripe to levy at this is that, and like it happened so early on, I was just in the way they addressed it, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to get over it, and like I can't let it detract from the movie so much. But like the bear trap thing, like they very much like shrugged that shit off like it was nothing, even though on that little kid's leg, like his leg would have been fucking snapped in half. Like
they basically answered that by saying it didn't hit the bone, like as if that was an excuse bullshit for him to just be okay.
Yeah, which is complete bullshit. Not only like that it would just, not hit the bone, that it would just penetrate like the top layers of tissue or whatever, and they could just take it off. But the fact that like an hour later, like he's like hobbling around, like walking on it, like pretty much full weight, like not needing crutches or like to like hop on one leg or anything like that. Like it was pretty much just, he's back, he's good, but he has like a slight limp. Like it was just not believable. I wish they had kind of done something else to incapacitate him to make it like more believable and not so extreme, but still get the job done with regards to the narrative. But
I will say believable. What was believable about that was his scream. My boy let it rip.
Yeah.
And, in the first one with the Emily Blunt in childbirth or stepping on a nail, she was very quiet, but dude got a bear trap on his leg, and he just those lungs got to work out.
Yeah, Noah Jupe delivered. Like, definitely one of the best like on-screen screams I can like. It was so believable and like very intense. And again, it fit the scream of someone who had just had their legs snapped off by a bear trap. But I guess it didn't hit the bone, so we'll let it ride.
He's fine. Just just rub some dirt on it.
And lastly, real quick, Cillian Murphy, fucking great in this movie. Like, he's so good. He's such a, I don't want to say he's underrated because everyone likes him, and I think everyone has good things to say about his acting all the time, but overlooked maybe. Like, I think he's a good character actor, and we're been in a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, of course, but this is one of the best performances I've seen from him, especially as what is essentially the male lead in this movie. Yeah,
Agreed.
Super good. Super good.
I wonder if, in the first one, they basically, it was kind of like a meme, a joke of like John Krasinski with his beard just like constantly shushing people. Right. And Cillian Murphy doesn't do that, except when they put the kids in the closet on the island.
Yeah.
And for like half a second as the door's closing, he does it. And I was like, I wonder if that's just like a little Easter egg, a nod to all the people making fun of it on social media. But I know you just had your one last thing. My one last thing. We kind of did this backwards, but we haven't talked about it at all. And that was the prologue, the little flashback sequence, which I really enjoyed. This is the only part that John Krasinski is in as an actor. And you basically get to see day one. You get to see how the monsters got there, what their first, initial encounter on Earth was. You see it happening across the planet on different news reports. What did you think of this? It's honestly, it's like a cold open, and then you get A Quiet Place Part 2.
Yeah.
And it's like 10 minutes long.
It is. It's fantastic direction. It really sets the tone for how this movie is elevated over the first, and they're getting a bigger budget, and John Krasinski has more confidence and more experience behind the camera and doing some action, doing big set pieces like that, and weaving it all together. It was the perfect opening for this, and it was nice to see that on screen, seeing that day one situation, seeing the whole family together again in that context, but then also taking it to the horrific conclusion that it delivers in the title card afterward. Perfect. Very, very good opening.
Yeah, I really thought that served as a good reminder and just like a way to throw you back into the universe and show you. Obviously, we'd seen that was like a heavily teased part of the trailers with like the bus crash and all of that. So I'm glad that didn't give too much away.
Right.
Like there was still plenty of new storytelling in that little 10-minute segment to get things started there. But I love this movie. Like I said, not as perfect to me as the first one. But this is right now sitting at my number 2 spot on the year so far, just behind Judas and the Black Messiah. So 88 out of 100 for me. I don't know what it ranks for you, Johnny. I know you said right about 4 stars, 80-ish.
Yeah, this is just behind Judas and the Black Messiah for me on the year as well. So
love it. I'm glad you're a part of the family, the Quiet Place family now.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that wraps it up. I think
that does indeed. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it each week. And I'm going to thank you in advance for checking out the Week of Lasso. Like I said off the top, that can be found on our YouTube channel and on social media. We are dropping different interviews every day of the week from now until next Sunday. We're starting today with Nick Muhammad, aka Nate the Great, on Ted Lasso. I had a ton of fun putting this together. I'm super proud of the way it turned out, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. So be sure to keep coming back every day this week to check those out.
Yes, absolutely. We look forward to that. And follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, stay up to date with everything that we're dropping that is on the horizon, whether it be the Week of Lasso or
polls, memes, giveaways, all that good stuff. Like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, where we post all of the podcast episodes and those Week of Lasso videos that are on the way. You can find those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you get a podcast. We are there. And be sure to come back next week for another new episode. We will be talking In the Heights, as well as the first episode of Loki. We will see you then.